The last chapter ended on a high note, didn't it? Well, I suspect things will go downhill quickly from now on. They usually do. The year is 984-02. Yes, a whole month has passed since the events of Limbus Company have started. The sun was setting as they were driving along. Dusk was approaching. Then Charon was singing a strangely familiar tune, which Dante was humming along in their head to. Virgilius noted this, seeing that the most beautiful performances were born from broken and ruined things. Ironic, the way the world works. Well, considering a number of artists made great works of art while suffering from one or more mental health disorders, he's not wrong there. One of the more notable examples involves a certain Dutchman that cut off his ear. I believe he was also a sufferer of depression. As for why Virgilius has his attention on Charon, it was because Dante was looking in her direction, seeing it as unjust that they have not the privilege to fully appreciate their own music, partially due to the lack of vocal cords. Dante was silenced by this. Then Virgilius noted that she was in a good mood that day. Apparently joy brought out singing in her. Virgilius observed this. Apparently he remembered that she would hum that song when she felt down. Charon denied having such memories. She always sings when she's happy. This gave him a dark look in his eyes. This was likely painful for him, as the hue in his eyes it was that of one that wanted to express solitude as a colour. It was brief. Then Dante dismissed this as the sunset distorting their vision. What Virgilius mentioned was likely referring to him remembering her when she was Lapis. Yes, she used to be Lapis before all of whatever happened. Yes, the experiments of the ring, largely to do with that. Which means if Dante was remembering that tune as well, the evidence increases and is mounting up. Virgilius then spoke of Charon's world. Specifically that when she hums, it was lacking sound and colour. A long tunnel with no exit in sight. Dante then considered that, much like the history of the life that they've forgotten, well, let's just say that both Charon and Virgilius must have their own threads of cruel reminders. Then he told Dante that it was enough of personal stories. Their work is to manage their crew, not to befriend him. The sad look on his eyes was replaced with a faint smile, likely due to him thinking that Charon has some faint recollection of who she was. Dante then nodded and then went back to checking on the damned dozen. After their last mission, spirits were high, helped by securing a golden bar, despite making a mess of it a number of times. It was something worth talking loudly about. Rodya believed showing that card right there, likely referring to a card game before they descended to the branch facility, which was annoying Gregor, so he wanted to change the subject to, well, where were they going this time? Virgilius answered by telling them that they're going to District 11, specifically to K-Corp's nest, which is, at least according to Roland, one of the nicer ones. And this was revealed when he asked Nezak, who was Giovanni, one who was in an orphanage in that nest, and was later recruited by Carmen. Yes, that's where that particular individual was from. Heathcliff was interested in this, as that job he was in was taking him to places that he'd never thought to visit. Well, there is the problem of how to get to these places, as the city is the size of around multiple conventional cities, with the population of the entirety of Earth towards the end of the 20th century. That, and you need to live long enough to actually get there. Don Quixote was mildly excited, mentioning that it was home to another great individual. Speaking of a souvenir shop, she likely wanted to go there for a limited edition figurine set. Does anyone think that if she was in our world, she'd be a nerdy otaku? While Rudier's priorities were to visit a restaurant that's part of a chain famous for its Hamburg steak. Urtis complained at how easy things are now. When she was marching, all she had was a pinch of salt in her mouth. Yes, she's been speaking in terms of her being ex-military and has an understanding of what her place is in Limbus Company. Where Dante was in charge, she follows his lead and sucks up to him. Her story, when we eventually get to it, is likely one involving fighting, much like Gregor's was, minus the biomimetic arm, of course. Ishmael agreed that the only food that she could swallow during her voyage was canned soup, which tasted like iron. So it was hard to know what tasted better, the can or the soup. Yes. You know it's that bad when the can tastes better than what's in it. I mean, what kind of soup was it? Roger felt uneasy about this. And then she asked if at least Ryoshu couldn't wait to try the steak. And Ryoshu then imagined the variances in blood color by region, and it made her salivate. Okay, who said to take the term Blood Knight literally? She probably likes a steak rare. Roger shares my annoyance and then asks Sinclair what he wanted to eat, expecting a sensible conversation. He was noticeably silent, much to Roger's confusion and worried about him. Missal spoke plainly about his condition. He turned pale, along with suffering from hyperventilation and tremors. Yes, Missal stated this as if he was just stating facts. Dante wanted to know how long he's been like this. Missal answered by saying that it was since Virgilius mentioned K-Corp. Dante asked why he didn't tell them earlier. Missal answered by saying that they didn't order him to do so, staring at them as if it was their fault for not doing the obvious. Sinclair apologized for his upset stomach. Roger asked, she asked if he was sure of that. Then Dante saw a pattern, and then talked to Faust that they noticed a trend where one of them has a strong reaction to where they're going. Something strongly familiar, as if they'd rather forget, as they have a history with that place, asking if that's the reason why they were recruited into Limbus Company. Faust noted that they'd referred to the term as, team rather, as we, noticing even the slightest of changes. She can't tell them the reasons for recruiting the band of bird. She can, however, give a more generalized answer. She can't deny that the destinations and the backgrounds of each of them are indeed related. This irritated Heathcliff, asking if all uppish snobs have a condition that makes them drone on and on about things that can just be answered with either yes or no. Well, he has a point. Although if it needs a more detailed answer, it is necessary to drone on and on about things. And Faust says that as well, as, she adds that she adopts the most effective mode of communication for a given situation. That was the simple version. The way she put it involved words that required a larger vocabulary, one larger than Heathcliff had. Faust noted that he struggles to understand her as he's too uneducated. It's not the problem that Faust is overeducated. While Heathcliff was tempted to pummel her for this, they had other concerns. Specifically Sinclair vomiting. I'd hate to be the one to clean that up. Let's hope that the month of cleaning duty is up, as if it isn't, Heathcliff, along with Ryosho and Don Quixote, will be cleaning up after him. This at least quietened everyone down. It's clear that this chapter will be centered around Sinclair, if it wasn't already established by Sonia foreshadowing this, among others. Before Sonia and the Eurodivia distracted Baba Yaga, he mentioned this, and Sinclair was less able to cope with this than the other two, partly due to having less experience. Sometime after this situation, Gregor wanted to make it clear, asking if Virgilius meant the back streets of District 11. But in this case, he meant what he said. He meant the nest of Cakor. He missed pointing that out earlier, as everyone got a bit excited. Virgilius told him that he rarely misspeaks, if ever, confirming that they're heading to that location. Gregor noting that if they're entering a nest... Virgilius then completed that sentence by confirming that there's an immigration process. Roger was worried as she didn't have a K-Corp visa, asking if any of the others have that. Heathcliff was confused. Why were they looking at him? Ryosho told them that the solution is simple. CI, and then keep on DER, till they've reached the defense. Cider for short. Probably means something like cut in, drive, entry ready. Well, whatever it means, Ryosho, what you have is a violence orgy deserving killer answer, or vodka. Whatever the true answer, Task Force Damned stopped questioning it. Ishmael noted that a company as big as theirs might get a free pass, not to mention that Ryoshi's plan to break through would take ages. That Blood Knight greatly underestimates a nest with a wing intact. Dante then asked why they didn't take into account how much they would suffer for that cider. They didn't, because as usual, their opinion doesn't matter, even if they're the reason why they don't stay dead. Virgilius agreed with Ishmael. A visa wasn't necessary in their case due to Limbus Company having backing from the shareholders of a variety of fields. Honglu asked if he knew the shareholder of H-Corp. Apparently they once personally visited his home because his younger sibling, who may or may not be Jia Huan, insisted upon getting a red passport as a child. Virgilius couldn't say, as he's merely a humble guide who is in no position to know that, even if it was a question worth answering. Honglu thought that was harsh. Get used to it. You're confusing him for someone who's sociable and not with Asperger's syndrome. I can speak from personal experience with that one. Then Virgilius considered the route of the checkpoint as their concern. Though inspection means that there are plenty of people looking for an easy way in, including those who would take a pass by force. There are likely walls to keep those not meant to be going in from getting in as well. Myself questioning that there are some of those surrounding the bus. Dante mentioned, have bus, will battle. They then proceeded to fight those willing to kill them to get into the nest of District 11, who were then fed into Mephistopheles for fuel. Charon, some point after that, announced that she had parked. Virgilius ordered them off the bus to get inspected, and decided to warn them, in case they're feeling inclined to their usual antics, to not go around making a scene, expecting things to go their way. That's not going to work out so well there. He needs to be intimidating, in this case, based on how the last mission went, which was successful despite that happening. Then in the immigration checkpoint, a tannoy told them that they were welcome. Yes, all visitors were welcome to K-Corp's nest open-heartedly. To please form an orderly line as they entered and stood where the instructions indicate. It was a mostly white with parts of green checkpoints. Reminds me of a Spanish airport. They like white marble in their airport buildings, although this one had a menacing and interrogative atmosphere. It subdued the tempo of even to Heathcliff. Sinclair wasn't holding out so well, though. Thankfully, Roger and Gregor, likely understanding his position, were calming him down, although they weren't answering why they were comforting him. Then Virgilius decided to take the and remarked how nice it was for them to stay in line and behave, like a brood of chicks on an outing. Then Ishmael noticed that he was outside with them and not on the bus. Dante wanted to know why he was outside this time. It was because this was a nest, and he's there in case of any unexpected trouble, as he saw it as too much responsibility for Dante to bear alone. Dante saw it as, I can't trust you to this up, so I'm coming with you to save your when you do it up. Dante kept this to themselves in case any of the Squad of the Damned translated. Ishmael noted that the line was moving quickly. They'll be at the front in 10 minutes at most. She was, however, concerned about the 13 of them answering immigration questions. The main problem was understanding Dante, asking what they should do. Dante observing that she spoke quickly and was more inquisitive than she was previously. She did this when she felt anxiety. Virgilius was just about to speak to them about that, in the line that they were in, which was likely for the more special cases. He went on to say that the K-Corp official would only ask very simple questions. They should respond in kind, such as when the border official asks about the nature of their visit, they should say that they're there on behalf of Limbus Company, and to please refer to their work visa, and all they'd need to do was recite that exact phrase word for word and they should be fine. He'll take care of the rest. They just need to prove that they aren't there to cause trouble for K-Corp. Faust then said that if that was too much, they should keep their mouths shut and present their employee cards. Thankfully for Dante, keeping quiet and not causing trouble are the easiest tasks in the world for them. Although this sarcastic remark was not clear, as this was made sneakily. Faust didn't translate regardless, and not just because Virgilius was not looking in their direction. Then Virgilius told them that they were next up, and was open to questions from them, but he wanted to make sure that they were considered meaningful. And if it was, quietly raised their hand. This resulted in Dante and most others raising their hands. Yeah, it's worse than you thought, wasn't it? Rodion asked if they could carry their weapons, if their trip was for business. He confirmed that they can. Then she asks about Gregor's biomimetic arm and Dante's clockhead. Would they be able to get through? Ishmael answered for Virgilius that it should be okay, and not just because Dante's head is considered a prosthetic, not a weapon. So regardless of the visa, they'd go through, even considering Dante's ability to use time inversion on those that have been recently killed. As for Gregor's biomimetic arm, that's an augmentation. Yeah, Ishmael becoming the model student recently. It was since the casino job, because Dante made a mess of things enabling Don Quixote. As there's always one fool in the group, but they're supposed to be led rather than be the leader. Which was why she decided to take direct action as they betrayed her expectations. Seriously? You're expecting a lot from someone who was practically forced into a role that they're unproven with, and was treated like a glorified field medic with even less respect than one that's actually in that role? Regardless, Virgilius confirmed this, which answered Dante's and Gregor's questions. Virgilius then told Ryoshu to put out her death stick before speaking. Ryoshu told him that she didn't raise her hand. He was doing his best to ignore the raised hand of Don Quixote, likely due to him expecting an annoying question from her. But he finally caved in and gave her a chance to speak, asking what she wanted to ask. She wanted to ask what the purpose of the glass barrier was, the one in the middle of the building. A clear dividing wall where, on the other side of it, the line was much larger, which, according to Gregor, had people sitting on the floor waiting for it to move. They've clearly been waiting a while. Milsalt noted that there were 3 times the armed guards as well, at least compared to their side of it. According to Virgilius, most glass walls are there for safety reasons. Roger explained what the other line was, the red one. It was for the residents of the back streets. Each nest handles immigration differently. Without a proper visa, it's almost impossible to get into a nest. It's why there were attacks on the way there, as those people wanted their visa to enter the nest. Virgilius saw it as not their problem, even if they could solve it. However, that wasn't good enough for Don Quixote. Whether it be the gloomy and oppressive atmosphere beyond the glass wall or what was happening inside it, it was unclear to Dante. Then Eurydice told them that they're up next. Dante then went with them to go through immigration. Ishmael then reminded them of how to answer. Ryosho was annoyed by this, telling her that if she reminds her one more time, she'll show sangria to her, or the official, or whatever. Likely meaning sword and nasty grievous roasting in anger. Well, best give her a roast then, or restraint ordnance and specific training. Ishmael was worried, but so far the inspection was going smoothly. The checkpoint official asked dryly their affiliation and purpose of visit, and each responded that they were from Limbus Company, on business, and showed their employee card. It was pretty much the same for the others once Gregor and Rudyard went through. It was a customary gesture more than anything. This made the people in the other line jealous. Ishmael noted something was wrong. The glass wall was thick enough to block out sound, so it was hard to tell what was going on. It was because someone's father was being dragged away in cuffs by security. He was looking beaten and blooded. The child looking scared and confused. Ishmael advised not getting involved, as that man had clearly broken a taboo. I think we can guess what happens next as, well, for example, breaking the taboo of recording video footage in District 14 is practically a death sentence. Breaking a taboo, such as damaging a residential district anywhere, will lead to those breaking it being hunted down by fixers. Heathcliff saw it as not their problem. Well, certainly not a problem for impoverished vandals that broke such a taboo, as not something that stuffing enough cash in the right pockets can't fix. Yeah, I don't think that would work. Besides, Ishmael was thinking that he was taking the... Heathcliff was jokingly stating that he thought that she didn't care. Dante was unconcerned about him teasing Ishmael as he had bigger concerns, such as the usual problem creator. When this checkpoint official asked Don Quixote's affiliation and purpose of visit, she responded, "I have come to liberate the weak and powerless." I'd ask if she was high, but knowing her mental state, narcotics would probably provide temporary sanity, as what she just said there was the most inappropriate thing to say in front of a checkpoint official. This one clearly sees that she's insane. And she told them to release them at once, asking if they can't see that they're suffering. Thankfully, the checkpoint official was a professional and repeated the question of her affiliation and purpose of visit. This made her even more upset. She looked through the glass wall and saw the child looking desperate and the man being dragged away. She then proceeded to thrust her lance into the glass wall, shattering parts of it, and shouting if they're unwilling to take actions, then she shall do so herself. Okay, I really want to know what her background story is, as I want to know why she's outside reality enough to not see that this is an incredibly stupid thing to do. As this resulted in a code purple being declared, due to a violation of Taboo K185 on site, either meaning damage to the glass wall or damage of K-Corp property in general. Regardless, they requested from both site units an intimidating immune response. Then the tannoy sounded that the checkpoint was locked down, declaring the code purple at Circulation Hall 2, Inspection Booth 14, calling for thrombocyte and leukocytes. Thrombocytes are platelets, as in what formed clots to seal any cuts, while leukocytes were white blood cells, as in part of the immune system. Basically, Don Quixote made a wound, K-Corp are working to repair the wound and deal with the invaders of the body. The sirens and the metal gates dropped. So the sinners should really be going to code brown after this happened. Heathcliff regretting how he should have smashed her skull in and carried her in a body bag. Ishmael doubted that this would have made much of a difference. Yisang then mentioned what I said earlier about what was coming. Faust saw it as fitting for K-Corp. Then security forces were approaching them and saw them as what they're there to take down. The sinners readied themselves for battle. After fighting the first group, Dante thought that they were used to this sort of situation, but this looked serious. Faust agreed as they violated a taboo of a wing. Dante didn't see how this was a problem, as it wasn't like anyone was hurt, other than what they've already fought, asking if they couldn't just talk their way out of this. Faust looked at their face as if to tell them, "I'm not around here. This is some deep that we're in." She told them that regardless of the wing, infringement of a taboo it means... But before Faust could say the rest, a loud explosion left Don Quixote dismembered where she stood. Faust then completed her sentence by saying that lethal measures can be taken against a violator of a taboo without warning. Dante understood this to mean that they won't stop until the rest of the damned dozen are slaughtered. Virgilius then made it clear that they never ceased to surprise him. They managed to wring out the last drop of expectation that he had left for them, telling them that he's staying out of this, to pin the whole thing on her or take responsibility or whatever. Ishmael was annoyed by this, asking if he was accompanying them to handle situations that Dante couldn't handle alone. He replied by saying that he's there to take care of inevitable problems, not a session in the wind. He casually pushed his way through the armed guards, clearly implying that they can understand that he was not a part of this, distinguishing between him and those that violated the taboo. He crossed his arms while leaning against the wall, as if to say that this wasn't his fight, as far as he's concerned. As far as he's concerned, they started it, they finish it. Seriously, what expectation did he expect from someone that he practically threatened to accept being executive manager? One with no memory or even experience with managing anything. Then there's those that Dante is supposed to manage. A team of anti-heroes where it ranges from the voice of reason, that is Ishmael, to one that's completely delusional, such as Don Quixote. They barely function at the best of times, where it involves Dante pointing them in the general direction of the objective, advising them what to use, and staying out of the fighting themselves. Otherwise, they don't give a about what they think of them, as their role is to make sure that they don't stay dead, and while they should get more respect for this, like with medical professionals in our world, they don't. Is Virgilius that desperate to bring Garnet and Lapis back? They has the other 11 recruited based on them being up messes inside, with nothing left to lose. Who's in charge of Limbus Company itself? As in, who recruited Faust, who had enough authority to offer him a way to bring those two back if they had his expertise at their disposal. We don't know who's funding the before and after team, do we? Faust likely knows, as does Virgilius, but neither of them are talking right now. After fighting yet more K-Corp security, Dante asked if Virgilius was really just going to watch from there. Even though Virgilius couldn't understand them, he told them that they won't sway him with that look, as he's a guide that none pay heed to. It would be impertinent of him to brandish his weapon. Dante is a manager that none would pay heed to, even if they would say anything. Although Virgilius did mention K-Corp's singularity was healing bullets that restore most wounds almost instantly, basically giving those shot with that a temporary healing factor. It's like what Dante can do, but it doesn't need conscious effort. Dante tried to say something, but to no avail. I mean, even if Virgilius could understand this. Then more K-Corp security came for them. After taking care of the next wave of security, Dante spoke of them. Specifically their use of HP bullets, where one shot was enough to heal any fatal injuries as if they were never inflicted. This made Heathcliff snap. He couldn't take this, as he saw this as the most pointless fight in the world. And that's considering the fights that he's been in so far. Certainly during his time in District 10. Faust then reminded him that she said that fighting a wing was an exercise in futility. Roger didn't see that the futility would hit them right away. Minsalt noted that the flesh regrew as soon as it was injured. He found it difficult to continue with the fighting. Ryoshu saw art as rubbish like that it was the worst kind of battle for a Blood Knight. She cuts and slashes with her sword and not a drop of blood was being spilled. Dante asked if anything could be done. Faust mentioned that HP, or heleporesis, is a bioengineered technology that allows for the continuous repair of damaged or lost cells, which implied that it's not nanotech but chemical related that grants a temporary healing factor. One dose lasts considerably long, but imagine those receiving a constant supply of this. It would be a battle for attrition. They couldn't be defeated. Imagine fighting an army of psychologically stable Deadpool clones and you'll get the idea of what they're up against. She saw this situation as hopeless, until an enthusiastic man with as much passion as Don Quixote usually has laughed manically and energetically, announcing his presence that in the height of chaos, he has arrived at last! This figure approached them with terrifying force, reminiscent of a frenzied beast. I'm guessing that's even by the damned dozen standards. Heathcliff wanted to know what this figure was, and, well, the figure that was approaching them, running towards them even. Missant had an ETA of 3 seconds, asking Dante for their judgment. Dante had nothing. Virgilius was the only one that wasn't surprised by this. In fact, he was displeased by this apparently expected arrival. It was K-Corp Superstar, who was a jovial-looking man with an obnoxious laugh. It was Siegfried, greeting an apparent audience, telling them that they're free to share stories of the heroic deed that they are about to witness, but photographs and more will require permission from K-Corp. He also can't linger, as he has a magazine interview to attend to in half an hour. Virgilius was wondering when he was come, hearing that he had become a wagey serving a wing. Siegfried saw that his tongue was as sharp as ever. He was there in response to the code purple, seeing that his friends were the perpetrators. Virgilius denied that they're friends, and he hopes that he understands that he had nothing to do with the commotion. They had a mutual understanding that he should give them a spicy lesson. Heathcliff angrily wanted to know what they were muttering about. Let us just say that there was some collective guilt considered, which involved not only Don Quixote being killed, but you and the others getting killed, and Dante inverting time for all of you, experiencing pain for all 12 of you being brought back. Ryosho then asked, what stone did he come out of? Siegfried understood that they might not have heard of him, as some are from far enough away for this to be the case. He shall grant them the privilege of photography for this special occasion. Otis was annoyed at this treatment, as it was as if they were worshippers on the street. Then we found out that Don Quixote was a fangirl of his. She was unable to contain the excitement. Dante wanted to know what was wrong with her. It turned out that it was Siegfried that was the one she was speaking of earlier. Virgilius then mentioned that they were in a hurry, requesting that he gets this done within a minute, and if possible to keep Dante out of this, largely because they needed to bring the others back to life. And perhaps due to Dante's head being a prosthetic, which is something that gives him an understanding due to him having artificial arms as well. Aimed for 50 seconds! Then the skilled fighter and talented performer demonstrated his capacity to be the hero, as his built-in arm cannon tore through the sinners effortlessly. Telling them to look at the camera once more! The fans will love it! Ryosho commenting that he's too damn strong. Siegfried Force, it was cute! Clearly none of the identities available at this time were enough to overcome this cybernetically augmented fixer. This pleased Virgilius, as the message would be clear when they were alive once more. Dante was silent, but Virgilius noted that it was about time they learned what happened when they kicked up a ruckus in a nest, thinking they could get away with it. His patience had run out. Although, this would likely have happened at some point. Then Virgilius mentioned to Dante that at one point, they used to be something of a bigwig. Now this surprised them, as they found this hard to believe, as they're a powerless leader who fumbles in any emergency, constantly being chewed up and spat out and ignored in the trash by those who are supposedly below them, seeing them as a glorified field medic. The thought that they used to be a respected leader of many in the past, this gave them a desire to ask Faust for another way to recover their memories. As for us, the evidence is gathering that who Dante was someone far less glamorous, but someone that Virgilius used to know in the past, that he failed. I suspect that the Red Gaze was lying to Dante to try to make them feel better, and was failing miserably. It didn't stop Virgilius from chewing them out on their faults in their performance as manager, memory loss not excusing this. Dante thought of the family that the K-Corp staff showed no pity towards, as if they were just material for processing. Don Quixote might have got them into trouble to rectify this injustice, and it would have haunted their sleep for days if they turned a blind eye. Heathcliff was also tightening his grip on his weapon as he witnessed this, so if it wasn't the crazy blonde girl, one of the others might have done that. Virgilius wasn't necessarily wrong when he mentioned that Dante didn't do everything in their power to keep Don Quixote down, although as far as I'm concerned, I doubt that they'd be able to stop them all. I mean, the cleaning staff at the checkpoint probably has more respect than Dante does. Out of fear, they told Virgilius that taking back their head might not be for the best after all. Virgilius wanted them to install the microphone next time, as he wanted to understand Dante as well. Assuming that they've got the point, then Siegfried shouted that it took 46.5 seconds! Another day! Another heroic tale of justice written! Virgilius observed that the curtains were closed, telling Dante that it was time to rewind. After 12 hours of whirling agony, they were all in one piece. It was the first time all over again. This was humbling as they were all quiet. Siegfried asked how Virgilius was, as they rarely meet in recent times. He hadn't shown up to the League of Excellent Nest-Dwelling Fixers lately, either. Apparently he hadn't read the dozens of invitations that he sent him. Well, this was due to Virgilius changing addresses, and he didn't have time to lick top brass boots while... well, unlike him. Well, at least he's honest. The hostility was clear to Dante, although they didn't know what the history was between the two of them. And Faust noticed the disposition difference between them. Dante wanted to know what she meant. Faust stated that Siegfried was a pro-wing fixer, and Virgilius prefers to be a free agent, believing that a fixer loses sight of core principles the moment they become subordinate to an influential entity, such as a wing. Well, the Red Mist appears to be one exception, as she maintained her core principles even after deciding to be hired by Carmen. Virgilius is one who is strict towards those of power. While this was going on, Don Quixote, despite having been slaughtered by him not that long ago, went back into full fangirl mode and was approaching Siegfried with shaky hands, honoured to see him. Yeah, has she forgotten that he tore her apart moments ago? Mentioning that she's collected figurines of him, but she has yet to get the limited editions. She set her heart on becoming a magnificent fixer such as him. He was touched by this. He had a little time for an autograph. She took him up on his offer, excited at this prospect. Gregor had to calm her down to stop her from being overwhelmed by that prospect. As far as K-Corp was concerned, the sinners being killed was the end of it. I mean, it didn't matter to them that they wouldn't stay dead, as they were killed for breaking the taboo. That's all that mattered. So the tannoy announced that the Code Purple was dismissed and the lockdown was lifted. Siegfried announced, Huzzah! That's a job well done! Now then, until next we meet! He then leapt into the air, and the travel permit was gained in the end. Virginius then returned to the bus, clearly only getting off knowing that they'd run into Siegfried. He was upset, although the others didn't seem to care that much. Certainly not that Siegfried fangirl that was Don Quixote. She was on a high after that encounter due to the autograph that she received from one that hammed it up so much that he'd be unsuitable around those that are either kosher, vegetarian, or vegan. Sounds like Brian Blessed. She asked Dante to pinch her cheek rather. That makes much more sense, as she felt that she was caught in a dream. Dante wanted to give the blissfully ignorant blonde girl a word about her performance. They had another encounter, though, as they walked out of the border checkpoint. The nest itself was made up of skyscrapers with green strips in parts. At least the part they can see immediately. When an armoured vehicle stopped before them, Ortiz saw this foe as bold to challenge them right in front of the nest checkpoint. Faust stopped her, as this was from LCC, the clearance department. The doors opened to reveal Sard and Effie in their LCCB uniforms. Apparently, according to Effie, they cycled 3 laps waiting for the lockdown to be over. They still had confidence and poise, even after the change of clothes. Well, more so than the sinners did anyway. Gregor noticed the difference. Sard mentioned that their previous attire was to infiltrate the casino, which was ultimately useless though. Dante was silent due to their team making that useless. Gregor noted her sharp tongue. Dante remembered the barely organised chaos that was their previous operation. Effie mocked Dante's clock hands trembling, believing that Sard made them cry. Sard then mentioned that she was just being playful. They had much room for improvement in regards to skill. She made up her mind that the LCB department had its own character. A positive impression despite all that went wrong in District 10. Faust noted that the Before team was supposed to be on site at this hour. Effie told them that the rest were there already. Those two stayed as they had useful intel. Gregor believing that they cared about them. Roger believing that they were fans knee-deep in their charm. Like food cooked from ghastly ingredients, yet still turned out well. Roger, your charm isn't that good. Gregor experienced that on the battlefield. Sard was questioning the kind of food they'd been eating. Then Hong Lu got them back on topic. Regarding the intel, Effie mentioned the target location is occupied by another faction. More manpower is needed as a result. Ortiz thought that they were the usual gadflies attracted by opportunity. Dante remembered that there were others attracted to the Golden Bars, from G-Corp wing remnants to syndicates in the casino. But Effie noted that this would be different. According to the immigration inspection records, a few weeks ago, some members of N-Corp was dispatched a few weeks prior to the same location as well. Oh. We already know that the Golden Bars are of interest to N-Corp. They already have one, and here, in District 11, they're sending their forces to where they're going as well. Yes, Ishmael was concerned by this. It wasn't an officially disclosed activity, which is why K-Corp let them pass, which implies that a deal was made under the table. N-Corp sent staff in advance, so the operation won't be a smooth one. Gregor was worried about making enemies of several wings as they go along. Okay, so far N-Corp is an enemy right now. The only one. As far as K-Corp is concerned, all you dying at once was the end of it. Faust mentioned that long-term, conflicts of wings would be unavoidable. Where due to N-Corp not making this officially known, it would end as a conflict of interest. It's possible that they aren't there for the golden bar. Gregor was familiar with this, how it doesn't change that they're convenient pawns for higher-ups to throw around. Then Effie mentioned that some morons caused a scene at the checkpoint, asking who they were. Don Quixote was nervous that rumors travelled fast, as if they were on Rocinante. Dante noted that this was embarrassing to her. Perhaps she was realizing that reckless actions had repercussions. Either that or she's glad that more people know of what she's done. Saws thought that it was a shame that she missed that. Who would mess with a wing at the border checkpoint unless they had lives to spare? Dante was silent, suspecting that they figured it out, as had Don Quixote. Sod then was about to make it clear that she knew. Then Ishmael told them to not waste time, that they should get going, not wanting to drag this out any longer. Effie noted that Virgilius was nowhere to be seen. Gregor told them that they went back to the bus first. Sod thought it was a pity. She wanted to say hello to him. Effie well, he wanted to leave an impression on them next time, vowing to do so. He's planning if they can join his team in their stead. Dante was confused by this. That was the reason why they wanted to meet him? Sorry, he made a contract with those 12, not with you two. Sal then said it was a joke and told them they'd meet them at the site. Effie adding, if they make it one piece, having no confidence in them, even though they can be put back in one piece after being torn apart. As for the background, in the Germanic version of this legend, he's Siegfried. In Norse, he's known as Sigurd, where the story varies depending on the version, where elements of the story involve a fight with a dragon, bathing in its blood to make him invulnerable, except for a part of the back, drinking its blood to understand birds, don't ask me why, roasts and eats its heart to gain the power of prophecy, and then took treasure from two brothers who were arguing about their inheritance, even waking up a Valkyrie. In the stories, he was either a noble or a member of the Danish royal family and a descendant of Odin. In the Norse version, he was given a magic drink to make him forget his love. She killed him and then herself due to this. The German version involved one being tricked into stabbing the weak point in his heart, killing him. Now, Siegfried the K-Corp fixer, he's certainly a tough one, strong enough to take on the damn dozen in less than 50 seconds. He's also one with the appearance of a Norse hero, one that's outwardly strong, brave and forthright, although he's not one that's vulnerable to deception. He was also one with elements of a superhero from the DC universe, which was likely what the marketing department of K-Corp was counting on for selling the figurines. It didn't take them long to get into trouble, did it? Well, until next time. Hail the rabbit!